So, our culture at the Quebec airport is that, well, as you see here, people who say it cannot be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. That's our culture at the Quebec airport, and we push our employees to come out with innovations. Innovation of the Month is one of the programs we have, and uh, that is reviewed by the board of directors every month. So, and people who say cannot be done should not interrupt those who are doing it. This is a George Bernard Shaw Nobel Prize in Literature quotation. Now, I took a bit of a picture here because we're in the phase, in conceptual phase, simply to have some visual in support of what I want to say. The evolution of the Quebec airport started through different projects. Sometimes we heard that we need to try things, to have projects to move forward in BIM. So that's pretty much what we did without really having projects that were 100% BIM initially. Our first project was a multi-level parking facility. We experimented with different tools, 3D tools. The architect had did a SketchUp. We hadn't asked initially for much. Um, Simply to present a SketchUp, and then internal partners really realized to what extent visualization was an incredible tool. So then, parallel to that, we did a combined technical services center with along with a fire firehouse, right? So we asked for a rivet at that point. It was as simple as that. And at the same time, it was a good tool for us to understand how the market behaved. And it was a good learning for us, and it made it possible for us to learn things to prepare later projects. The biggest project of our history, really, at the Quebec airport is in process of planning and design phase, which is the terminal expansion. We're adding 7 loading bridges, a more than $100 million project. It's a pretty big project. I mean, $100 million construction cost, right? So we decided to really go all out, and in order to better control our costs and the deadline as well. We started, which this is pretty much a vision that we had. I started selling the idea to higher management. It was easy because the president, vice president already had presentations on BIM and the advantages of visualizations. So it was fairly easy for me to sell it. What I started doing initially was a strategic organizational plan. What do we want to do with that? We set 5 strategic goals within the organization. I was doing a lot of projects within the airport as person in charge of services, so I knew where our weaknesses, and I started from the weaknesses to determine what project optimization projects would be. The first one was visualization for better comprehension. We saw it earlier, and I think everybody agrees with that. It's not easy to understand the project in 2D, yeah, not easy to understand, even in 3D sometimes if the models are not as detailed in terms of materials and all that. So imagine for someone who doesn't work with projects to look at it on 2D piece of paper. Quite hard. What we wanted to do also is to increase coordination because we always want projects more and more quickly, and people would work in isolation, even if they're close physically to each other, but it was more done step by step usually. So we wanted to improve coordination because often we don't leave a lot of room for design because our deadlines are usually pretty tight. So how could we improve coordination? That's one of our strategic goals. We also wanted to do scope control. We had a hard time validating that the design respected what we had done in our program of needs. So I asked myself, how then to control that? Because people in charge of projects were managing day-to-day problems, putting out fires rather than making sure that the construction and the design really reflected our needs. What I also wanted to highlight is a more precise quantification of project costs. I wasn't saying that they weren't precise before, but we wanted to improve it and maybe have more rapid turnovers, whether it be with regards to payment demands and construction, have quantitative rather than qualitative, more tangible. It's also easier financially to convince Vice President of Finance, let's say, to sign a check when we can prove with figures, with a model, compared to reality, that we are really at 80%. And the last step was we wanted to facilitate transfer to facility management. The last big 2008 project, which was in the redesign of the terminal, $105 million project. I remember there were complete boxes of documents and plans that were delivered to our technical data center that are still in boxes, so and not very performing. And then problems crop up in operation management or operations. Well, so there are people here who are going to be happy. So we use it in planning. What's important for us is the visibility of the control tower, of the planes that land. So we had difficulty expressing how we would position cranes on the field, and explain to people from Transport Canada and so on that we were analyzing the situation in detail to show them the options of positioning of cranes. It was very easy to communicate our intention with that. When I was speaking of innovating culture, I mean, that's how at the Quebec Airport we're a small gang of techno fans with our watches connected to the phone, that kind of thing. So we tried something recently. We married the world of construction with the world of video games. And we just completed a preliminary phase here. We use concrete 3D models in conception and design. We export them into a video game format while optimizing, let's say, the dimension of files. And it's with an automation of texture and management that we developed a Quebec company that it's called Cortex Media, which does all kinds of applications. We developed a process so that within a few days we can take a model version and bring it into a visualizer, 3D, right, with the viewer right on the in front of our eyes, and you really feel you're inside the infrastructure. You can really visualize what's going to happen. It's easy to see in 3D, I mean, but when you're in it, that's another dimension. You really understand. What I wanted was for all the stakeholders, regardless who was involved in the project, to be able to sit down, put the viewers on, the glasses on, and move around as they wish. Because sometimes when we study, we don't want to have preset views. We want to be able to browse around a bit. That's where you can really get good comments. We also wanted to increase coordination, interprofessional coordination. What we did is we set up a project office for proximity that makes it easier in terms of coordination. I mean, people just need to stand up to talk. They need to hold a meeting. They can just call a meeting within a minute. I think that's a very positive thing. We also implement visual coordination sessions. At present, we're pretty much at the beginning of our design phase, so we have not had that many visual coordination sessions, but a few, and to view existing conditions. We use a format called DCF to share comments, especially between the construction manager and the professionals, to share the info. It's a little easier than just to speak it out loud. And of course, we look for clash detection. I mean, that's the basis. But how we view it in order to do our control because, we're still looking at three aspects: cost, deadlines, quality. With regards to quality, which also has an impact on costs, we would always do a plan, a review. So we implemented, because we had the right people to do so also, we implemented a step where before publishing documents, for call for tender documents as a client, we do a last validation, a last checkup, if you want, of the clash detection, just to make sure the quality. What you see on the right is a report of progress. We had progression codes in the model. These progression codes makes it possible for professionals to communicate on certain information, for us to see the progress of the modeling, and when we do clash determination at the end, that we can, um, that we don't do clash detection among elements that are ongoing or not completed. So I see it as a client control before uh, we start. It's not easy to do on a 2D plan when you haven't been involved in depth. And with this here, with interference matrix, we can do a final checkup in terms of quality. Our vision, well, is because we do have professionals. We work in project office with project managers. We do call for tenders by lot. So, um, while the design is still very preliminary, but what we wanted to do, we didn't want for all of the coordination that is done in design be redone on the site, because I mean, if we use models and do coordination, then we don't force the contractors to do a minimum of what we've asked for. I mean, we're going to spend money in coordination for nothing. So the idea here, and in our case, it works fine. It's a design that is very close to the construction. And what we're going to do, because we started the first few temporary lots, but um, we wanted to have matrices of federated models where we can compare. But at the end, what I need really is a design model that has evolved. How do we do scope control for the program? Well, all the technical data sheets. The idea was to put it all in a database. That database makes it possible for us to have to write up reports. Now we used the code book as a database. It, we would save that way all our technical sheets and our needs, our equipment that we provide as a client. We modelize that, um, that and that is right put into the database and reference, so that when that database is connected to Revit in this case, because we decided we would standardize with the use of Revit, that the synchronization can be done, so the two systems can talk to each other. Then we can pull out validation reports that the design is going according to the program of needs with very interesting precision. So there's a cycle, an osmosis between this code book and the database and Revit throughout the project. With regards to quantification, well, it's for cost assessment, both in design and for tender bids. I think a 3D model gives us an interesting precision level and also a quicker cycle if the integration is properly done with people from the estimate department. So with regards to progression control for monthly progressive payments, always more interested for a client to have quantitative. I know that not everything can be quantified through models, but at least we have a great part of it that is quantified, that much easier to justify the payments. In terms of facility management, what's important is information and not the level of details. My users internally, we don't really use Revit. We use TI from Kojak. So what we need on a daily basis is information. I mean, we keep the models for future projects, but if we do have a 3D model at the end, we will benefit from it and we'll use it. So what we want is a continuity of the design model all the way to the end of the project. It's not our intention to replace models by building models, but these models do evolve as a function of the needs of construction and the site directives. And then at the end, we come up with a level of detail for those who know of it. It's level 300. And what's important is that the envelope corresponds to reality, so we recognize elements, but not at a great level of detail. We'll keep the information, but we will not use it. So, facility management, we have an osmosis between our software, which brings together our program data and our modeling tool. These are parameters that are made to work together. We are working to have a correlation table. I heard earlier, what do clients want? Many do know it. Same for us at some point. I mean, people use client information, but if we ask for planning, it's hard to make up one's mind. So I tried it myself. Not easy. So I turned to our software supplier who said, yeah, we can do anything you want. What do you want? I was a little caught. Caught short. What are we doing? We're building work sessions with mechanical engineering, people from IT, to determine what are the important parameters that we want. And though we realize that all these software have a whole lot of exporting, importing tools, and it really doesn't take much to connect them. And in fact, they all use SQL databases. So right there, we have a common column. We can do a whole bunch of stuff with that, depending on the time and the love we want to put into it. So after all that, we need to move forward. What's important for a client is to have a vision, to have people internally who are impassioned by this, have maybe young people who have a culture of innovation, even older ones as well. They may have one as well. But to have something that is fresh in the company, people who are ready to roll up their sleeves and go get answers. For those who have a little more experience and decide to come on board, it's to leverage your experience as project manager, because it's all common sense that applies, right? It's important also to have a vision. You have to know where you're headed, hence a strategic analysis before. And now you can always improve it, but you should always question it, because in a process such as this, often we think that we have found the solution, but often there are many others. So we have to leave aside our ego and question ourselves. To give ourselves room to evolve and to improve. People think that you need to determine everything right off the bat. Well, you can't have perfect processes right from the beginning. You need to leave room for improvement. And that's a message for everyone. And I know we want things to be very structured and for the technical people, but if the tools are not flexible, we will have a lot of problems. So we need to have this room to maneuver. We need to be surrounded by passionate experts. If people are not passionate, it's going to be hard. So make sure you motivate your people to move forward. We need to innovate. We should never stop looking for new solutions. I think that's key. And we need to give ourselves the right tools. And speaking of tools, thank you, Julie. We work with CIMA for the acquisition of Point Cloud. That's one of the tools that we used to facilitate the work of professional. We launched this initiative as a client. We wanted to reduce the fees in some cases because we knew that our plans were not perfect. So with tools such as these, we knew that we got our money back. In terms of change management, in my opinion, we shouldn't start with a management plan and like a BIM management plan and then a change plan, change management plan. We want to know where we're headed. We need to be ready so that we know how to manage changes, not just internal changes, also changes within the industry with partners who've made a selection. Not so easy to get the real truth sometimes, and there are many people who have already done Revit. Now, to what extent they experts, you got to make sure they can manage things, and then to have a proper management plan, execution plan, and go into detail at that point. So back once again, I think that I'll never repeat it enough. If we do not have a strategy, regardless of the tactics you're going to use, it'll take you a long time to get there. And even if you have tactics and you don't have strategy, well, you're not going to get there either. So the two go together. Strategy without tactics doesn't work. So the structure that we've implemented, I use my BIM 1 logo because it's our main BIM manager, but with Proulx, Schema, SNC-Lavalin, and others. We, as clients, thought, well, we'll be the leaders in the process. We'll be at the center of it, because the questions, when they come in, and management, we need to make sure that that line is respected and clearly said, because there's so many traps that we may fall back into problems. So I went to get a main BIM manager that had the technical expertise that I didn't have. You need a very varied expertise, very general as well. Someone who was with Intellibil. So you've seen the level of Intellibil earlier. I think it's very interesting. So for myself, the client's place, well, it's a strategic planning, but a flexible one. You can't put too many shackles on yourself. You need to be able to react quickly, and you need to be focused on the project objectives. A client in BIM, I mean, a lot of fun tools. You can really trip on it, but lots of things you could do, but maybe doesn't meet our objectives. Might meet others, but not the ones we've set out. Maybe secondary objectives, not the primary ones. The client, in my vision, in order to reach success, is a mediator between divergent interests. If we put professionals together, one will need the information that the other one doesn't want to give, and the other will say, "Oh, I never gave him that information." So we become a catalyst, a mediator, where we can better impose deliveries and ways of collaborating among partners. It requires an active participation. I think you need to be there on a daily basis, constantly, because people in the team pretty much turn to us to get our feedback, and that's very important to be able to give it as quickly as possible, even if it's not easy. We decided to support also different maturity levels in the team to level off the different BIM maturity. We held some training sometimes, and we came up with tools such as Cloud Point or Point Cloud. It's just a little refresher sometimes, make sure we're all on the same level. And we do verification and quality control. It's our responsibility. With regards to BIM maturity and 3D modeling, everybody has different standards. Some may have some standards because they did such a project. Another company may have different standards because they did a bigger project. So we need to be able to bring it all together so that it meets the needs of our project. Collaboration and information sharing. Not everyone is at the same level. Some are very open, some are very proprietary. We speak of sharing and better comprehension. I mean, it's fine. We just need to be able to manage these things. And then different methodologies and tools. Some are very advanced, some less so. Important, therefore. What we did is we implemented processes. We did it with the Shima group in order to optimize our projects, but while maintaining flexibility in reaching our objectives. We are also preparing certain contractual documents, but I think what's important is to clarify the mandates as much as possible. And that goes through management plans, but also sharing of information. I mean, it's important to put that in contractual documents. Confidentiality, author rights, and intellectual property. And I can understand also that when we develop content, when it costs many thousands of dollars to develop, we can be rather sensitive. We want to use reference documents, IBC, as an addendum, the Institute for BIM Canada, IBC. So when we speak of processes, we try to determine the list of deliverables. We had a list that we wanted to put into a deadline process as soon as possible. But the idea was it was important to have the same understanding of what we're doing. What I like to, something that we do within our project are the APIs. We have little applications that we provide to all the project teams to make sure we reach our objectives. Clash sphere generators to detect clashes. We developed a import-export share parameter module and a few other little ones. Well, what are shared parameters? Well, they're the ones that we establish as being important for the project. Uniformat codes, master format, and construction phases. Here, the professionals don't need to play with that information, but we reuse their model to come and attach information. We tried not to lose the work that was already done. Okay, I wanted to reassure everyone it doesn't come out of nowhere to work BIM, and everything is easy magically. I think you need hours and hours. So it's 1,000. The theory of 10,000 hours put out by Anders Ericsson, saying you need at least 10,000 hours to start becoming good at something. And I think that the bigger ones, whether it's Bill Gates or Mozart, these are people who've put a lot of hours into what they're passionate about. And to me, that's the key of success. You need the time and you need elbow grease. Thank you. That's it from my presentation. You can find me on LinkedIn. If you have questions, no problem. I'd be happy to answer.